Welcome to Market Proof Marketing. And today is the first time we have someone on the show who I told him I don't know how to introduce him. So I'm just going to say he's the co-founder of Zillow, Hotwire, Picasso, and countless other companies. And if you didn't already guess, Spencer Rascoff. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Kevin. I'm very happy to be here. Great to speak with you today.
I've got pages of questions, but I think we should start with Pacaso because that was the reason for the initial reach out on my part. Is it's fascinating what's happening, and I just wanted to make sure that in the new construction world we're paying attention. It's not directly related at all at the moment, but it's still something to watch out for. So it's a
little related in certain markets. So Pacaso is my new startup. It lets people buy a portion of a second home. And so the concept here is that most people's second homes sit empty most of the year. And instead, there's a better way to own a second home through co-ownership. You can buy an eighth or a quarter or half of a second home through Picasso, and then you co-own that home with other families. And you use the Picasso app to schedule visits to your home, and Picasso does the property management. So Allison, the founder of .loop, which Zillow acquired, Austin and I started the company a couple years ago. We got a couple hundred employees, and we're in about 25 markets in the US and in Europe. And the company's growing very, very quickly. And the relevance to NewCon is that a number of our homes are new construction. So we buy a lot of homes from home builders. We work with a number of home builders to spec out homes directly. So in markets, for example, like Napa Valley or Tahoe or Aspen or Vail, 4 of our most successful markets, we have close partnerships with infill builders in those areas. And we're buying new construction homes. We fractionalize the homes into eighths and we resell them. And we've got great relationships with home builders in that way. And we hope to grow them even further as we move into new markets.
That's fascinating. I didn't realize that was already underway. I don't want to get sidetracked because this is not where I wanted to go, but have any of the NewCon folks taken upon a project that they might not have otherwise done because they understood the ability to fractionalize it with your partnership?
Not yet, but soon.
Yeah, I imagine that's going to become.
Yeah. And I mean, so for example, as we launch, well, we're moving into Mexico rapidly. And I think we have a project in Spain that would meet the example you just provided. When it's done that way, we can also build co-ownership amenities into the homes from the beginning. So all of our homes, whether they're used or new, we do owner closets or owner lockers in the garage. And so if we know right from the very beginning, working with the home builder, that it's going to become a Picasso, then we can build certain amenities straight into the specs.
I mean, everyone's aware of single family build for rent. I feel like we need to coin a new phrase right now, SFBCO.
I like it.
Single family
you heard it here
co-ownership.
First. You heard it here first.
And I know you've started this journey with Austin. What is it about Austin Allison as an individual that made it easy for you to want to team up with him again?
Oh, wow.
I think he's the most underrated entrepreneur in the real estate world. Am I wrong?
Yeah. Well,
not underrated. Maybe that's not fair.
No. You're totally right. I mean, that's rapidly changing because his profile is rising because of Picasso's success. But I mean, let me rave about Austin for a second, because he's everything I look for in a co-founder. I mean, I invest in a lot of startups, and so I meet tons of founders. I think I had 550 startup pitches last year is what I was on. I was on the receiving end of that.
You just made me tired.
And so I talk with a lot of founders. And what Austin has is exactly what you'd look for. He's got incredible grit. He grew up with very little and he made it on his own. He's a second-time founder. His first company, .loop, was venture funded, and then he sold it to Zillow. And he built a great company at .loop and a great culture at .loop. And then he stayed at Zillow for 4 years. So he has kind of the big company tech executive experience from having been in Zillow. He has the startup experience from having started .loop, and he's had an exit. And he also has great founder product fit. So what I mean by that is there's no such thing as just a great founder. There's only a great founder for a particular idea. And Austin is the right founder for Picasso. Why? Because he understands Proptech incredibly well, but he also is this persona. He has had his life changed by owning a second home, in his case in Tahoe. And the memories that he had, he has created for him and his family and friends at that second home in Tahoe are really inspiring to him. And he's truly on a mission to create a product where tens of millions of more people around the world can experience that joy of second home ownership through co-ownership. And, I mean, you should have him on sometime, and you'll hear him talk even more passionately about how connected he is to that mission. But it's really genuine, and that's what drives him, and that's one of the keys to Picasso's success.
Spencer can't even see my show notes, but he's providing me perfect segues. So you just said tens of millions of people enjoying co-ownership. I was having breakfast with some of my friends in real estate here in Columbus, and one of them, went down the now typical path of, oh yeah, these wealthy people buying theirs. And I was like, look, Tesla started out as a car company,
exactly,
serving a certain group. And I just feel like the revenue that you can get without having to have unit scale yet to build the platform will eventually let you move downstream to more affordable properties over time. Because you can't support, I mean, you don't want to learn how to do this business perfectly on $300,000 homes. Right? Is that?
Yeah, no. So I mean, we talk about Tesla a lot. That's exactly the right analogy that we're following. So if you look on the Picasso website right now, you'll see a lot of luxury homes. You'll see whole homes worth 5 to 15 million that are, divided into eighths. And those are all luxury homes. But the mission and vision of this company is very much to bring it to the masses, or closer to the masses. We talk a lot at Pacaso about Lake Norris, which I've never been there, but I believe that's a lake near Cincinnati where Austin grew up. And, you can buy a great house there, he tells me, for $500,000.
Yeah.
And, the hope is that Picasso can become mainstream enough that you can buy an eighth or a quarter of that home for, just a fraction of that price. And so that's very much in our sights. We're just starting at the higher end, and then we'll flex into,
you got to build the team and have the margin on the product. So it makes perfect sense. And fantastic. I think that's right. Obviously the right way to go. Moving towards Proptech more generally, what trends or pain points, do you feel like you're surprised that people haven't tackled yet?
Well, think about the funnel, right? From at the top of the funnel, you've got search and discovery, trying to find listings. Then you move further down the funnel towards seeing homes, and then further down the funnel to actually buying and selling. And then at the very bottom of the funnel, kind of payment and title and escrow and all the ancillary services, financings. That's the history of Proptech for the last 20 years. So, let's focus first on the search part. The first generation was Realtor.com and other early portals that had a paid classifieds model. They took the newspaper listings model, where listing agents would pay to advertise listings, and they brought it online. In the case of Realtor.com, they charged listing agents for photos. And so that was that first era, 1995 to 2005. And it sounds crazy thinking about it now, but that was their business model, was to put free listings with 4 photos and then call listing agents and say, hey, if you want all 25 photos, pay us.
If you want to make the consumer happy, you have to pay us more money so you can give them the pictures they want.
Exactly. But actually it was true in the other categories of Proptech as well at the time. So think about early lead gen for home valuations, right? You had Home Gain and House Values, which did the same thing. They advertised, find out what your house is worth, and then you'd fill out a form and they'd sell your email address to buy-side real estate agents or sell-side agents that would contact you. And so and also in lending, that was the lending tree model. It was, and even the bank rate model was sort of fill out a form and then people will bug you. And so all the goodies, all the good stuff was kind of behind this wall where the service provider was paying to provide it to you. So that was 95 to 2005. Then the Zillow Trulia era of kind of 2005 to 2015 was about empowering the consumer with access to information. And so again, we're still innovating at the top of the funnel, the search part of the funnel here. And that era is basically over now. I think most of the innovations, including 3D walkthrough, video tours, the transition, the platform shift towards mobile, like all that story has been written.
Yeah, we just got to get the metaverse on Zillow.
Well, actually, it's a great point, Kevin, because there may be another platform shift, afoot. The platform shift from desktop to mobile is what allowed Zillow and Trulia to leapfrog in terms of audience over realtor.com.
Mm.
And they also had a different business model. Their business model charged buyers agents for leads, and that allowed them to have all the photos. They didn't have to charge listing agents for photos. So because of a business model innovation and a platform shift, they took the audience leadership. Now, if we are in the middle of a platform shift towards some AR, VR, meta future, then it's possible that Zillow could be disrupted in terms of audience leadership, and there could be some other startup that does a better job.
I feel like they'd have to have a CEO that was completely not paying attention to trends, which,
maybe. I don't know.
Anytime a company gets big, they're going to be slower to innovate for sure. But I feel like it would be.
But the problem, this is the classic, great book, and lots been written on the innovator's dilemma. I mean, like, if you're at Zillow right now, you could be very much awake and not asleep at the wheel, but still underfund a platform shift because you're protecting your core.
And there's just a lot of different directions.
Yeah. And you don't know, I mean, are you gonna plant seeds and make investments in all these emerging platforms? Whereas there are startups going after each of them, and maybe one really cracks it. So I don't know if there's a real platform shift. I don't know if people are really gonna search for real estate, through a different.
But for now, search is kind of uninteresting.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So to continue going, the current era that we're basically innovating on is a little deeper funnel. It's the transaction itself. And the transaction itself, there's lots of innovation happening. There's obviously iBuying, which we'll probably talk about, where home sellers benefit from this service of selling their home. There's a lot of innovation happening on the buy side, where you've got companies like Fly Homes and Ribbon, investors in both, which are helping people buy before they sell. There are other, shared, let's call it shared cap table products, like an Easy Knock, where I'm an investor, or Divvy, which are doing other innovations around the transaction. And then deeper funnel towards payments, you've got a lot of innovation happening around the mortgage. You've got companies like Tomo, where I'm an investor, and others that are trying to digitize the mortgage. And then even at the very bottom of the funnel, you got title, escrow, and closing services, where there's also innovation happening. So that's where we are today. And it's a lot messier. I'd say it's a much messier thing to try to disrupt and innovate upon than search. In retrospect, search seems pretty easy.
Well, that's what it feels like to me, Spencer, is even Katera was like this example of where digitization meets the physical world, and then inherently things get messier. I mean, a lot of stuff with mortgage and the transaction, it's regulation and policies and procedures, and there's still a human element there, but ultimately the conversion to the digital world seems more, albeit difficult, straightforward as an end game. But then the next step is you got to physically move the dang boxes or build the structures.
Yeah, well, you're right. So I'm not as, you're way more familiar with that part of technology innovation in Proptech than I am. I'm not an investor in any of those, but I see a lot of those pitches. I mean, I've seen dozens of, like, sorry, what are they're called? ADUs, right? The things in the backyard.
Units, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I've seen lots of pitches around, we'll drop an ADU in your backyard and we'll share the rental income with you, or, and then, lots of things around 3D printing of houses and, prefab offsite home construction, et cetera. Like, there's tons of innovation happening in that world. And my friend Fred Twomey, is a great resource on that. If you should have him as a guest sometime. Yeah. But he's an investor in many of those companies and a real innovator in that space. But you're right, there's tons happening.
In everything that you've talked about in terms of search and transaction leans into what the consumer really wants. And I feel like that's where, in the physical world, when we're talking about offsite construction, modular, 3D printing, whatever, it gets the consumer what they want in terms of affordability or availability potentially, but not necessarily in the innate structure itself. There's some current compromise of less personalization, less high-end finishing. And, I've jokingly called the concrete 3D printed homes, it's, if you want to live in concrete poop, it doesn't, it's clearly different. And so the consumer has to compromise, where everyone else in the transaction of search is saying, give the consumer exactly what they want, easier, faster, less friction.
Yeah, I mean, I will. So again, I'm no student of construction. I'm a frustrated customer, having built a couple houses that
right.
have been, over budget and much longer than expected. I would observe as sort of a consumer of home building that it is a little bit strange that new construction is still built on property, like on site. Like
Mhm.
that's a little, you don't, nothing else is really manufactured like on site in that way.
Right.
But I'm no expert. This is
No,
not my,
and
not my area.
I'm not necessarily an expert there either, but I think a lot of it just has to do with the consumer's unwillingness at different price points
Mhm.
to say, I'm okay just having three choices.
Right. That's
There's
true.
great startups that are doing disruptive things in offsite and modular construction, but they have, two floor plans, take it or leave
Right.
it, and there's
Right.
options. But I think that's one of the hurdles we have to overcome. All right,
I think that's overcomeable.
I do too.
This reminds me. This is a bit of a tangent, but my first startup was a company called Hotwire, which provided great hotel discounts by hiding the name of the hotel until after you purchased it. So you go to Hotwire, it still is around today. It's owned by Expedia. You go to Hotwire and it says, hey, there's a 4-star hotel in downtown San Francisco for $100 and a 5-star hotel for $150. And it's in this neighborhood. It's in the Union Square area, but you don't know the name of the hotel. And for the first couple of years when we were marketing it, we were kind of apologizing for that bug. We're like, to the consumer, like, yeah, like it's kind of a bummer. You don't know the name of the hotel and after you purchase, but isn't it great? You get great discounts so that was kind of how we try to put a positive spin on it. And then we realized it was actually a feature, not a bug, because when you go to Expedia and you look for a hotel in San Francisco, there's hundreds and hundreds of choices, and reading the reviews and comparing, and do I want a Hilton or a Marriott or an independent hotel? And like, it's actually overwhelming, and maybe reducing the paradox of choice to just a couple is valuable. And so I think that this conundrum that you're describing for home builders could potentially be turned around if properly marketed.
100, and it's really what the restaurant analogy: front of the house, back of the house. The back of the house in our space is unwilling to curate and iterate enough. It's like, well, we got those two widgets that we design in terms of floor plans, and we're going to ride that for 10 years instead of being more nimble and saying we need to develop a way to iterate and still only have 2 or 3, but they're always the right 2 or 3. And I think someone will eventually get there. Again, last Proptech question. Do you feel like you're drawn to Proptech? I mean, you've done so many things and continue to do more things. Is it because of this? And maybe not just you, but entrepreneurs and VCs in general. Is it the size of the TAM, or is it a love of housing? Is it just feeling like there's more slowness to change there? What is it about?
Well, so when I started Zillow with co-founders in 2005, we were coming from the online travel industry, and none of us had any particular love for real estate, but we saw an opportunity. We saw an industry that was not consumer oriented, where the main tech leaders at the time, as we already discussed, were just not prioritizing the consumer. So that was the opportunity. I then fell in love with real estate, as I got more into it. And I love houses. I love beautiful houses. I love going to open houses for fun. My real estate agent here in LA takes me to see houses all the time just for fun because they're gorgeous. And so I do like that aspect of it. It's sort of the intersection of design and finance. And those are two things that I'm pretty into. Now, that having been said, since I retired from Zillow 3 years ago, I started Picasso and I spent a lot of my time on Picasso, but I'm also a very active angel investor. 75 and Sunny is the name of my firm. It's based in LA. And about a quarter of my investing is in LA tech companies. And last year I did 40 new investments in new startups and 12 follow-on investments in companies I was already an investor in. Of those 52 checks, about a quarter were in Proptech. So I'm investing in lots of other things: future of work, creator economy, blockchain, NFTs, like enterprise software, lots of other industries. And I am pretty bored of certain aspects of Proptech. But the fact is I get really good deal flow in Proptech because of my experience in it.
Sure.
And I understand it pretty well. So that's why I'm still investing a lot in Proptech, even though I'm trying to diversify a bit more.
Yeah, so for those who don't listen to as many different startup podcasts as I might, to be able to follow along with all that Spencer was just saying, somewhat of like an actor who's been somewhat typecast because of his first big role. You're actually doing a lot more innovative things than maybe other people realize, but there's still some love there for the original thing that you had success with too.
So. Well said. Well said.
All right, Recon Food. I want to go there because I have 4 kids under the age of 16 myself, and the youngest 2 boys are still homeschooled. The girls, when they got to 7th and 8th grade, transitioned to school. And when they were homeschooled, I always had this vision of, they're done early, they're moving ahead, they're doing great in their learning, but now you have all this extra time. And so I would like, hey, you want to start a YouTube channel? What do you want to like? What is your passion? Let's fill this extra time with something other than Roblox and whatever else. So we'll talk a little bit about Recon Food itself, but talk to me about, as a father with a daughter, so you co-founded it together, but I'm really curious about the amount of kind of showing the way versus supporting versus holding hands, working on it together. What'd that look like?
So I have 3 kids. They're 16, 13, and 10. And I love involving my kids in my business as much as possible.
I heard in the podcast with your daughter, you guys have tech news breakfast
we did,
time.
Yeah. So, I mean, I used to, when I was a kid, I would come downstairs and my dad and mom would have 3 newspapers set up every day: New York Times, Wall Street Journal, LA Times. And my dad was in the music business. So we also had Daily Variety, Hollywood Reporter, and Billboard. So we'd have 6 physical periodicals and newspapers every day at the breakfast table. And we would basically read them together every morning and discuss them as we went. And we consume media online now, obviously. And so I miss that opportunity. So what I do in my house is I print a lot of tech news, things I see on Twitter, blog posts, summaries of podcasts, like anything interesting I see. I print it and I keep a stack of paper. And then, whenever the family's in the kitchen, we do tech news or business news where I read an article and then out loud and ask them questions. It's a little bit reading comprehension practice and a little bit learning about the world around you. And it's just a great way to teach the kids. And, during COVID, we were obviously on home quarantine for, more than a year. And, during that time, we also started cooking a lot more as a family. And, at around the same time, I had been on the board of TripAdvisor for a long time, maybe 10 or so years. And so I started saying to my family that I had left the board of TripAdvisor at that point, and I was thinking about different startup ideas. And I said, it always kind of bugs me about TripAdvisor that it's the average of a bunch of random people. Like, if I'm trying to figure out where to eat dinner in LA and I open TripAdvisor, it's the average of what tens of thousands of strangers have recommended. What I really care about is my 5 foodie friends, where are they going? And, or the 20 friends that really know LA well, where are they eating? So why isn't there a social layer on top of TripAdvisor? Now, my oldest daughter, who's very immersed in social media and is on TikTok and Snap and Instagram all the time, like most teenagers, she's like, okay, that's your problem, Dad. My problem is that social media sucks. That here I am on home quarantine. I haven't been able to see my friends in person in months. I'm doing homeschool. I'm on Zoom all the time. And I open up Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok to try to take a break from all the awful things happening around us and look at my feed. And she'd literally show me her feed, and it was like climate change, wildfire, social justice, election hacking, Russia, Russian meddling in the elections, all these awful things, COVID, pandemic, people dying. And she's like, as a teenager, like, oh my God, this is heavy stuff,
Yeah, not the stuff you want to
be. That's how she felt. Yeah. So she's like, but cooking actually is pretty cool. Cooking makes me happy. And so we kind of took my idea and her idea and smushed them together. And so what Recon Food is it's a vertical social network for food. And it's to reconnect with your friends and family that you haven't, that over a shared love of food. And in our case, during quarantine, it was reconnecting with them because we hadn't seen them in a long time. And the reason that, the reason I think there's an important place for it in the social media landscape is that horizontal social media like Instagram, for example, or Snapchat or TikTok are great, but there's a place for vertical social media that's category specific. So you've got All Trails for hiking and Strava for running, or Peloton for for cycling or running. Or LinkedIn is a perfect example. Like the things that I share on LinkedIn, I wouldn't share on Instagram. Like I got a promotion, or here's an article I wrote, or, my whatever, like career stuff. That's okay in a LinkedIn setting.
I feel like there's a battle right now for LinkedIn to stay that way, but that's a different podcast.
You know what? You're right. It's interesting, right? So Instagram is a perfect example where like Instagram just wants audience. So they want you to post all that stuff on Instagram too. But the more like business stuff that makes its way to Instagram, the less kind of intimate it feels. Like, it's not really sharing beautiful photos with your friends anymore. Now it's this, promotional thing. And that was the opening for Snapchat to take market share away from Instagram, because that became sort of more of a closed social network with your close friends. Anyway, the point is that Recon Food is, because it's food specific, it's like, it's okay to post. I mean, I literally just posted a bowl, this bowl of Special K with raisins in it, because that's how I make my raisin bran. I put Special K and then I put raisins in it. And I've always kind of wondered if anyone else out there does that. And I would never post that to Instagram, because that's kind of weird. That people would be like, why is Spencer doing that on Instagram? But in a food social network, it's great. And there's going to be a robust conversation on Recon about whether that's the right way to make raisin bran or not. A food social network allows for that, whether it's home cooking or restaurant food. So that's why we created it. And it's been a family project, labor of love, but it's also it's a startup as well that's growing quickly.
And I'm sure she's learning a lot about things beyond food.
Totally. So she's the CEO, and she's a software engineer, and she runs it, and she manages the engineering team, and she's in Slack 24/7. And she reviews code, and and we've got a great team, distributed team, about 10 people. And she's learning about management and business strategy and marketing and product development. And
I'm not one to scream that college is dead, but when you get enough use cases like this in the world, it's going to be a pretty compelling question as to whether you just invest in your kid's startup or send them to college.
Well, so we're about to go on our college tour over spring break. So I'm still long college personally, but I hear what you're saying. You're absolutely right that she's learned a ton.
Maybe we're just understanding more and more, and we just need to admit it altogether, that it's the network that you're building and the relationships you're making as much as what you're actually learning. You can learn anywhere, anyhow.
Wow. I totally agree. So I went to Harvard College, and I can assure you that I learned that I have benefited much more and learned much more from my peers than from anything I actually learned in the classroom there. That, if every class that I took, you could now find equivalent classes on YouTube or Coursera or wherever else, and get a very similar academic classroom experience. What is very hard to replicate is putting a lot of motivated, high achieving people physically in the same place, putting them there for 4 years, letting them form friendships and connectivity, and seeing what happens over the rest of their lives.
Kind of like cities themselves, right? Like
exactly,
why live in a physical space that you live in. Yeah. I joined Recon Food because I want to have, in your words, a robust conversation around pancakes. And I own ultimatepancakeblog.com because when I semi-retire, I'm just going to travel the world and do to pancakes what other folks have done to pizza. And so I was on this morning, I noticed that pancakes outnumber waffles on your feed 6-1. So I have to ask from our friend Will from MI, was the single waffle post, you said Team Waffle but I think that was just an appeasement, right?
So my co-founder of another startup called Q started the hashtag Team Waffle on Recon Food, and so I use that as appeasement for him.
Yeah.
So I made waffles this morning. I posted waffles on Recon. But I much prefer pancakes. I like crepe, like very thin Swedish pancakes.
And that's why I'm going to waste 5 minutes with one of the most important people in North America to talk more about crepes, because my favorite, the best pancake I've ever had in my life, and President Obama and I agree on this, is Pamela's P&G Diner in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where they have crepe cakes. So It's crepes on the edge, crispy. The middle is not much thicker than a crepe, but it has a more muffiny texture. It's folded over like a crepe, brown sugar, sliced strawberries, and sour cream.
Ooh.
And there's nothing like, he flew them to the White House after he went through the campaign trail and had to make pancakes for him because he agreed that they were his favorite too.
Amazing. Well, I have never been there, but I will go. In Pittsburgh, you said? All right.
Yeah,
It's
Pittsburgh,
on my,
Pennsylvania.
I will put it on my list.
No, I'm deep in this,
Yeah.
Spencer. Like, in barbecue, you've got the smoke ring.
Yeah.
There is a different test for pancakes, which is the absorption of the syrup and how to what depth in the cake does the syrup absorb.
Wow.
Similarly
Well,
speaking.
you're a pancake nerd. This Recon is for you.
Yes,
Kevin.
I'm gonna.
So I mean, the way we eat pancakes in my house is we use the Swedish pancake mix. I can't remember the name of the
Lunds, I think.
Lunds. Yes, thank you. There you go. Lund Swedish pancake, which is very hard to find actually. Whenever I find it in a grocery store, I buy like 10 boxes, and I use real butter so that the outside kind of crisps instead of using like a Pam spray.
Yeah.
And then we put Nestle semi-sweet chocolate chips into it. We roll them up and we eat them with our hands. So it's really a chocolate crepe, not so much a pancake, but that's pancakes in our house. And the problem is it's hard to make them fast enough because I make them and put them on the cooling tray, and I mostly, but sometimes the kids just keep eating them before, and like, so, but we never actually even sit down. We just kind of eat them as we cook.
Yeah, that's the only problem with pancakes is they do eat quick. Okay, last pancake related question. Have you ever tried making Abel skeevers?
No, what's that?
That is like pancake balls, and then you can inject them with different flavors. There's a whole different technique. You've got to put them in a pan that's got half.
Is this like a Japanese? My wife used to tell me
I think it's also Swedish or somewhere in Scandinavia, because Abel skeever, or German maybe.
All right, I'm on it.
Yeah,
I'm on it. I did just start making Dutch baby pancakes, which I just discovered.
I saw that. I've never attempted that. That would go
really, really good.
That's a whole other category. So there's dessert pancakes, there's savory pancakes, there's all different categories.
I did not.
So what I'm waiting for Sophia to do is to build Recon out to the point where then she can get 20% of my pancake app that's based on Recon powering, as a platform.
I love it. All right. You heard it here first.
Okay. Back to Zillow. I can't not ask this question, but I want to leave it as open as possible. Yeah. What would you say were the biggest either ups or downs of that entire journey? I mean, a lot has been said. You've written a book and the rest, but
let's see.
Biggest surprise or biggest.
So, I mean, it was the greatest, I'm so proud of my experience there. It was such an extraordinary experience. I made so many great friendships. What I'm most proud of was the company culture that we built. It was a really special place to work. And we were frequently recognized as such by those that judge that sort of thing. But I just, the people were the most extraordinary part. And the downs, I guess, biggest surprise, I mean, there was a lot of criticism along the way from many folks. Initially it was people that didn't like the Zestimate, whether it was real estate agents or consumers. Then there was always this undertone from the real estate industry of, oh, you guys are bad for the industry, you're going to put us out of business, or Zillow is just the enemy for one reason or another. And then the move into iBuying further exacerbated that. And then I retired, and then a couple of years later, the move out of iBuying, which I'm not there to have to worry about. So I'd say overall, Kevin, I don't like the criticism like that. I take that pretty personally. Like I hate that.
I think that brings us back to Proptech, generally speaking, either because it's affecting other people's potential income streams, or just the fact that it's around the second most emotive word in the English language after the word mom. I think, and Picasso has gotten some of that same criticism, but I don't think in either case it's been warranted. And if you talk about any type of technology, you got to weigh, total good versus unforeseen consequences or foreseen consequences that some people may not like. And I don't think there's any question that in all the cases I'm familiar with, that the net good is way, way higher.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. I agree. It doesn't always feel that way in the moment when people are throwing tomatoes at you. And I've had I've had my fair share of tomatoes thrown at me. But you're right.
Well, let's throw some tomatoes at other people. I'm joking. We don't do that. But Facebook down big in the stock, and even you talk about vertical social versus horizontal. I feel like Facebook groups is kind of a box out move from trying to get people to create their own vertical networks within it. But how do you think digital advertising, not just in real estate, but just generally, needs to evolve over time? Or is that also becoming just less interesting?
Well, I mean, Apple really threw a grenade at the industry, and the reason Facebook is having it's no good, awful, terrible week is because of Apple. And for those that don't know, Apple, well, you've probably, if you have an iPhone, you've experienced that Apple is now letting consumers opt out of certain tracking in their apps, and so it's very difficult for companies to do digital advertising. I see this actually with Recon, because Recon's only on iOS, and we've wanted to spend a little small dollar budget on Facebook and Instagram to drive users to Recon, and we haven't, because the instrumentation isn't there. Basically,
not as good as it was.
We can't measure the efficacy of the spend, and so we're like, oh, forget it. We won't advertise. So we're not giving money to Facebook or Instagram as we otherwise would have because of Apple. So I don't think Facebook is missing our like $1,000 a month, the missing Recon budget, but that's but Facebook says it's 10 billion in total is what they're missing.
Yeah, and I think I'm reading probably more into it because of places like Zillow, where that targeted, like the audience is already there. It just seems as we go further towards the essentially, to me, there's some interesting things around TikTok, but it also, the algorithm is so base nature of tapping into some of those same emotions, maybe more positive and humorous emotions than Instagram or Facebook in terms of its totality. But it's like, it's just a constant stream of entertainment that consumers aren't taking as much action on, unless it's apparel or food or other trends. But in terms of I saw something yesterday that Reels just is not as valuable. It keeps people on the platform, but they just don't know how to monetize it the same way.
Right.
And so does that mean that vertical digital advertising is also more likely to be an important part of the future?
Yeah, I think vertical, more niche audiences always monetize really well. So .la, for example, is one of my other startups, and .la is a small website, has a couple 100,000 visitors a month, but it is a media site that covers LA tech. So if you care about what's happening in the tech industry in Los Angeles, you're reading .la. So now, if you're a company like a investment bank or a law firm or a venture capital firm that wants to market to that small audience of a couple 100,000 people, .la is a really good place for you to advertise and spend money. So, so these niche whether it's a vertical social network around food or a vertical news site around a single city's
or a
tech
vertical
community.
Niche podcast about new construction marketing.
There you go. Exactly. Exactly. If you want to reach people that care about new construction
There's
marketing.
only 450 of them, but dang it, that's 90% of the whole audience.
Yeah. So, we joke, but that's exactly right. So that, I mean, the promise of digital advertising at scale, a la Facebook and Google, was that a marketer could spend money with one of those giant companies, and they would find the couple hundred people that care about new construction marketing, or the couple 100,000 people that care about LA tech, or the couple tens of millions of people that care about food within their network of sites or other sites where they power the advertising up. But that's becoming more difficult if you can't do tracking across these different sites, which is what Apple took away. So, advantage.la, disadvantage Facebook, I guess is the answer.
Hopefully you already built your audience over the last five years, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Last question. I'm gonna let you talk about OfferPad. This is kind of a big deal. In your world, with the SPAC and that business.
So I took 3 SPACs public: Supernova 1, Supernova 2, Supernova 3. Supernova 1 merged.
I need a better sound effect to go around those words. I don't have one.
So I mean, the purpose of a SPAC, of course, for those that don't know, is you take public basically a shell company and it's publicly traded, and then you find a private company that merges into it, and then The reason we named it Supernova is because supernovas then kind of explode and vanish. And in our case, the SPAC vanishes and the company changes its name to the name of the private company. So Supernova 1 was public. It merged with OfferPad. Supernova 1 fell away. OfferPad became the public company. OfferPad's a great company. They're a very well-run iBuyer, the second biggest after Opendoor. And I'm a huge believer in iBuying. And the fact that Zillow botched it and then chose to withdraw from iBuying is great for Opendoor and OfferPad. Now, the public markets haven't agreed with that. Most public market investors have said, hey, if Zillow can't make it work, nobody can. I'm out. And that's why Opendoor is traded from 25 down to 9, and OfferPad has gone from 12 to 4. But I actually think it's the exact opposite, that now that Zillow helped prove that home sellers love selling their home to an iBuyer, and then Zillow said, hey, but it's not for us. All that did is create much more running room for Opendoor and OfferPad.
Like you were saying, the innovator's dilemma of it from the people who own Zillow stock and the board, perhaps it's just going to be easier for someone else to make Nike than to change Converse, because we invested in Converse to be Converse. And we don't want you to fight too many multi-front wars at once with our money.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I'm not Zillow anymore, so I don't have insight, into Zillow's decision to withdraw from iBuying. All I know is looking at the data and also reading the research that I've read both at Zillow and at OfferPad. I know that consumers love this product.
Yeah,
like that's the irony, is that what happened with Zillow is not that they launched a product that people didn't like. It's that they launched a product that so many people liked that they bought too many houses. Right. It was so successful,
right?
And it had such good product market fit that they bought too much stuff.
And I think we just crossed 1% of the transactions last year were done using some form of iBuying.
Something like that.
Well.
Yeah. I mean, and I believe it's going to become 5 to 10%. I actually think I use NewCon as a benchmark. I say that, new construction is kind of 10-ish% of the market. 10% of the time you buy a home from a builder. I see no reason why 10% of the time you won't buy a home from an iBuyer. Or
especially in the new construction process, when you've got flexibility on closing dates and other things, why wouldn't 80% of the new con buyers want to take advantage of a simultaneous close? Or
exactly. So I think it's a great product. I think Opendoor and OfferPad are going to be really successful. Zillow decided to withdraw from the category because it wasn't for them. But that just is great news for Opendoor and OfferPad.
Yeah. Spencer, thanks so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it. We'll definitely have the other folks you recommended on the podcast in the future as well. But there we go, folks. One of the most important people in North America in the investment startup world, Spencer Rascoff.
Thanks, Kevin.